Un mana presentācijā ir Mārtiņš Luters Somijā, un tā ir vēsturiskais apskats. Un tā ir angliski, bet kā jums būs problēmas saprot, es varētu paskaidrot arī latviski. My lecture is focused to Luther's influence in Finland, and this presentation is partly based to my colleague Docent Matti's lectures and his dias. Thank you, Matti. Some dias I have made. And this is the main lines about Mārtiņš Luther's influence in Finland, and some general aspect as well. We know that Luther was very, very important person in the whole history of Europe, not only in the church history of Europe, Western Europe, but also in the history of culture, in the history of literature, and so on. And we know that the Reformation happened in the special time of Europe historian. America was discovered, the first printing book, and inside the Catholic Church was big crisis. Also we know that there was a so-called Renaissance, the revival of learning and culture. We can say that the modern world was coming step by step, so-called modern world. And here we see the influence of Reformation. The main influence happened focused on Luther's Reformation in Germany, in Scandinavia, in Baltic countries. And Reformation spread very quickly. Earlier also we know that to Lithuania and Poland. Later the Counter-Reformation was stopping the bigger influence. But also there was some influence in Italy and France. And we know also that these different branches that came from Reformation. Lutheranism, Reformed Church, Calvinism and Anglican Church, three denominations. And we can also say that the Baptist and so on, free churches are also, they also can go by, can stay on the heritage of Reformation. And very interesting is that first time in Albania, Lutheranism came in the 19th, approximately nearly 30 years ago, because Danish Herrnhutian Society began tour activities, and nowadays there are in practice 3 tiny small groups of Lutherans in Albania as well. This Herrnhutian group, Wisconsin Synod, Lutheran Church Wisconsin Synod, and also there is missionary activities of Swedish Laestadians. Very tiny. There are services in St. Paul's Church in Tirana and one missionary center in Durres, but very, very tiny phenomenon. But interesting phenomenon in any case. And we know very well these main principles of Reformation that are actual also today, as we heard about Dr. Ruiz Sidek's presentation, sola scriptura, word alone, authority of Bible, which is very necessary to follow today, and sola fide, salvation of man is based only on the grace, only because of Christ's work for us through faith. And now we find that the Reformation came quite quickly also to Sweden. Then the so-called Scandinavian Union was collapsed in the beginning of 16th century. A new regime by Gustav I Vasa was leading Sweden, This was very important turning point in the history of Swedish states and also in the history of Reformation. And Reformation meant the appearance in Sweden of literature in both languages of the states Swedish and Finland. And Gustav Vasa took possession of a bulk of church property, thus enabling him to pay off the debts of the state. I am not sure how religious man he personally was, but he was in any case very, very active to control church properties and these questions. Important person was Bishop Mārtiņš Luters, who was Finnish origin and originally was joined the Dominican order. He had studied in Germany and Italy and acted as a prior of Dominican monastery in Sigtuna. And in his time, we can say that there was cult reform and monasteries are more and more closed, but it was not real Reformation time that time. The real Reformation came by Mikael Agricola, who was Finnish Reformator. He had been born in the 1610 in Pernaja, which belonged to Swedish-speaking area. However, Finnish might have been his native language, or at least he learned Finnish very young. Agricola's name means farmer. He started his schooling in Viipuri, and then had work in Turku. He was working together with Bishop Mārtiņš Luters, but what is very important, in the year 16th century 36, he was sent to study in Germany, the University of Wittenberg, where Philip Melanchthon was his teacher in Greek, but he also was in the influence of Mārtiņš Luters. I don't know what kind of personal contacts he had to Luther, but in any case, Luther was also one of the important persons in this university as well. And Agricola was real Reformator. After finishing master's degree, he returned to Finland. He was appointed a member of Cathedral chapter and headmaster of most prestigious school in the diocese. And he was published a spelling book for Finnish language and prayer book in Finnish language. And what is the most important? He translated New Testament in Finnish language. And later he was bishop of Turku diocese, and we can find his statue in front of Turku Åbo Cathedral. Very important is also his ABC book and this New Testament. Here is not photograph, but the painting picture how he presented the Finnish in Finnish translating New Testament to King Gustav Vasa. I don't know how it was really in the real history, but this is something like national romantic picture from Finnish history. And after that, Lutheran confession united became a central ideological principle of Swedish Empire, including Finland. And Sweden was the first time officially declared to be a Lutheran country in 1544. And later Lutheran Orthodoxy was a very important factor in Sweden and Finland. And in the conference of Uppsala in 1593, the Lutheran confession gained the status of official state ideology. And Lutheran confessions came under the protection of constitutional law. There was very firm state church system, and it was created in this period of Lutheran Orthodoxy. And if we think about this meeting of Uppsala, it was quite strong words against Catholicism, Calvinism, and Anabaptism. And having different Christian confessions in Sweden, including Finland, was an impossible idea during the period of Orthodoxy. Later we know one defensor of faith, also from our history, King Gustav II Adolf. He was well known in Livland as well. We know that when Finland, or Sweden was, not in Finland, but Sweden was great power, the influence was also connected to Balticum and to Inkerit-Seme. And Gustav II Adolf was something like defensor, real faith, Lutheran faith. And we know that in this 30 Years' War, in the beginning of 17th century, the Finnish troops were very well known as hakkapeliitat. It is something like praise from Finnish history. And later Lutheran worship life was organized also all time, from very beginning when it was developed, and also Lutheran hymnals and many other principles. And we say that Finland was including, and also Sweden was very strong Lutheran countries. And we can say that this is one of the important period phrase in the Finnish history. Sermon was a central part of worship all time. And Lutheran Sunday services was very important. For example, before the Holy Communion, parishioners had to confess their sins and present their knowledge in basic Lutheran doctrines. And the core of Sunday services was, of course, sermon. And in the time of Orthodoxy, sermons was very long while. It can be sometimes that people were sleeping, and so on. Another question is that even pastors was proclaiming pure doctrine, people were sleeping, and that is also one question that we must remember. Also, one of the results, there are many results in culture and in Finnish history in general from Reformation, but one of the results was national system of education, because activities, administration of the church were made also this educational system. Bishop Johannes Getselius was very important. Typical church buildings. And here is this Johannes Getselius, elder, Bishop of Turku. And we know that he has also connections to Livland, because he was superintendent here in Rīgā for small period as well. And he had also printing press, and his catechisms is very well known, printed in Finnish and Sweden in 1766. And very important was also Swedish Archbishop of Sweden, Olaus Vepelius' catechism. There is several prints about it. And what is interesting, it has later printed in English. It is well known in Apostolic Lutheran Church. And recently it has been printed also in Albania as a result of its Lestadian missionary activities. And it is also something like historical fact. Svepilius Catechism is well known in Albanian language as well. Then came in the 18th century the Pietism in Finland, and we know the history of Pietism, we know Spener, Francke and so on. And it is very interesting that Johannes Ketzelius' eldest son, Johannes Ketzelius Younger, had some contacts to Philip Jakob Spener. He had studied in Frankfurt. And they have some contacts also. And there was many representatives of Pietism, and there was also different branches of Pietism, even so-called radical Pietism, not only Spener's influence. And what is essential part of Finnish 20th century? They are revival movements, big people's revivals, awakening movement that was beginning in the many parts of Finland. Here was also from the 18th century so-called prayers movement that is still alive in Western Finland, but later came other revival movements, so-called Finnish Pietism, Paavo Ruotsalainen movement, evangelical movement, Laestadianism, and later in the 20th century so-called new pietistic movements. And what is interesting that in Finland this people's movement was very connected to Lutheran teaching and to Luther. And I think that Finland is a special country because there is not so big controversy between pietism and confessional Lutheranism. But Finnish revival movement, I can say that they have fulfilled the Spener's original idea. But all core pure doctrine, all core confessions, okay, but it must come from this head to heart. And that's why we can say that Finnish Church has been until 2016, so-called pietistic Lutheran Church, where there are two elements: Old Catechism Christianity, Lutheran confessions, but also revival and awakening in personal way. And I think that many Americans, confessional Lutherans, cannot understand this because they are linking sometimes the German Pietism and its extreme phenomena. Of course, in Finland we have some radical pietist ideas, but they were not very important. Luther's Church Postilla, a collection of sermons, was published in Finland in Finnish language in the 1948, and the interest of Luther began among pietistic pastors. That is very interesting also. And Fredrik Gabriel Gerberg was more and more going. He was founder of evangelical movement, to Lutheran confessions, and to Luther an emphasis word of sacraments, more than pietistic movement. Then I go to the science, to theology. Luther research has been also during 100 years typical phenomenon in Finnish theology. It has belonged to essential part of Finnish theology and church history as well. We can find that so-called Luther Renaissance appeared also in Finland. We know that in the year 1917 was big Luther jubilee in many countries, and also in Finland. And after that we had, in the interwar period, many Luther scholars, academic scholars, For example, professor of church history Martti Ruut was very famous. He had contacts to Ulrich Adamovich as well, because he was, first of all, researcher of revival movements and Herrnhutism and so on. But he was also Luther scholar, and he had contacts to Ulrich Adamovich as well. Then there was Eino Sormunen, very talented Luther scholar, systematic theologian, and he was later bishop of Kuopio in eastern Finland. And then Yrjö J. Alanen, professor of systematic theology, later professor of ethics. And later, after World War II, this Luther research continues. I can mention names, Professor Lennart Pinomaa, and also Lauri Haikola and Aarre Siirala. But unfortunately came also this tendency of Lund school. You know what means Lundian school from Lund University. It has some liberal aspects and liberal interpretation, Luther research. And that's why also in 15th after World War II, here was some battle between confessional conservative Luther interpretation and this Lundian school in Finland. And we can say that especially Aarre Siirala was typical representative of Lundian school. Also Lauri Haikola, but Haikola was at the same time, his background was in pietism. And that's why it's very difficult to say, but he was a little bit in scientific research connected to his Lundian principles. But one who was very much against Lundian school was professor of dogmatics, Osmo Tiililä, who was also criticizing Finnish church very well, and even he separated from Finnish Evangelical Lutheran Church and his pastoral duties in the beginning of 16th. Another person was Uras Saarnivaara, who is well known also here in Latvia, worldwide well-known theologian. He was Luther researcher who wrote 2 dissertations about Luther. One was published in America, well-known Luther discovers the gospel. Here in Latvia, you know it, Luther atklāju evangeliu. This is based in his first dissertation, where he has researched the Luther way from Catholicism to new understanding. And later he wrote dissertation about Luther also at the University of Helsinki, and also to this trigology belongs also Word book. And then he popularized many times Luther with many books. And he was one of the most well-known Luther researchers in the world, especially among conservative and confessional circles, and especially also among Missourians and so on. Uras Saarnivaara was also promoting evangelization. He was serving in Finland. He was serving in America as theological teacher in some seminaries, but also in Finland he was not only teaching in some institutes, he was also pastor and we can say that real evangelist. Here we see that at the end of 16th he has here, he's speaking of evangelization meeting in street. His heart was burning also to proclaim gospel, but it was not also theoretical theologian, but he was also using practical theologians in evangelization and so on. Very interesting, because he was so very well educated, doctor of theology, and written many books in different areas. And then we can go to the 18th and 19th. Here is internationally well-known Luther researcher Tuomo Mannermaa, and his school, Tuomo Mannermaa school, is worldwide very well-known in the whole world. Here the main principle was in ipsa fide Christus adest. In the real faith, Christ is present. In the real faith, in the faith, Christ is present. that Kristus dzīvo ticībā. Kristus dzīvo ticībā. In ipsa fide Christus ad est. Mannermaa had several students, but we know that his theological principles has divided also, that there are different opinions, and of course there is this ecumenical aspects that some people maybe do not accept. He died approximately 9 years ago. I started my career at the University of Helsinki in 1981, and that time he was, in the 18th and late 19th, he was very big name among Finnish theologians. Christ present in faith. Maybe this is pareis tulkkuus. The idea of a divine life in Christ, which is present in faith, lies at the very center of the theology of Reformation. Other scholars in the research of Luther. Eero Huovinen, still alive, now emeritus. He was short while a professor of dogmatics, later Bishop of Helsinki. Professor Miikka Ruokanen is also a very well-known theologian. He has been teacher in China as well. Now emeritus. Today Professor Risto Saarinen is in the service of university, and docent Simo Peura, later Bishop of Lapua, today emeritus. Juhani Forsberg is still alive, and so on. And from church history field, my former colleagues, today also emeritus Carlo Arfman, has written many books about Luther from perspective of church history. We were together serving in the Institute of Church History long time. Nowadays we both are retired. Carlo came from Kainuu, from northern eastern Finland, and his background was in this pietistic Pavarottinen moment. He was quite careful in many questions, but some time ago he separated from the Finnish Evangelical Lutheran Church and joined the Roman Catholic Church. That is very interesting phenomenon because he has made his career as Luther researcher. That is very interesting. It was his personal step. That means that we have had during 100 years very much Luther research in Finland from different points and in different fields, and of course with different opinions and with different interpretations. We can say that from Saarnivaara to Aare Siirala there is big spectrum how to interpret Luther today. This is also a big question. We have Luther text, we have Luther's books, but I think that sometimes everybody has own interpretation. That is reality. I am not cynic, but I am little bit realistic here. But our own personalities, our own theology, our own inside matters came to our research. There is no 100% objective research, and it is very difficult to go into what happened 500 years ago, how we go to Luther's head, how we go to Luther's world, Luthera pasaule, and so on. I think that better to study Luther is to read his own books, catechisms, his postillas, what he really wrote from spiritual meaning. And very interesting, I can also mention one phenomenon. There is one bookshop in Finland called Luther Divari, led by Hannu Halonen, and here is available long and Christian books. It's named Luther Divari, but you can find here many old books about church history and from different perspectives, and it's very important. Unfortunately, today I don't know how younger generation estimates books or give value of them, but my generation, of course, think that printed books are real books, not only internet text or so-called books that we can voice by ears. And we know that Luther was actual in year 7.5 years ago, but he is actual also today in Finland and in Latvia. Liels paldies par uzmanību!